John McMullen at JF McMullen. Looks like John had an interesting day this morning at the where the heck were you? In the doctor's office or getting what are you, like a Jiffy Lube or something?
No, I was at my car dealership getting an oil change, which is never fun.
You gotta learn to drop the car off and leave for lunch and then come back.
Well, no, usually I get there. I'm one of those people that get there at 8 in the morning, so I'm the first, and then it's not that bad. But the earliest they had was 9 o'clock, and that throws everything off. Then it becomes a free-for-all. Yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And as you can see on my Twitter account, when you got the TV blaring with Steve Harvey on, which Ryan seemed to have an issue with, which I'm surprised by.
What, the Family Feud?
Family Feud. Family Feud, which there's many incarnations and many hosts. I do not enjoy Steve Harvey, but I noticed women love Steve Harvey, including my wife.
Really? What is he? I mean, is it the look or is he just entertaining?
Well, I assume they find him entertaining. It was a great sort of social experiment because the waiting area is about room for 10, 11 people. So I'm going to say there were 7 women and 4 men. And 7 women were dying at Steve Harvey's stick. And the 4 men were all sitting there stone-faced. Every single one of us, stone-faced.
Oh, that's funny.
Just miserable.
Yeah. All right. Well, you had a tough morning. But it's hot out there. It is. We are.
That didn't help either.
No, but it's hot out there. We are less than 21st is when Atlanta gets to camp. So we're about 3 weeks away from the opening of camp. And how about this story? We talk a lot about Eli and what's going on there, but he kind of dismissed today the possibility of a competition. He says, quote, no, I don't feel like it's a competition. I feel like I've got to do my job and I've got to compete every day and try to get better every day. That's the way it's been my whole life, and that's just the way I always approach practice every day to improve, to earn my place on the team, to earn the respect of the teammates and do it each year. So it's essentially sounded like Eli felt like this job is his job. Do you think there's legit quarterback competition in New York, or is this Eli Manning's job?
No, I think there's a legitimate competition, and really I don't think there's much of a competition. It's a clear succession plan to get to Daniel Jones, who's obviously the future of the organization. I think you just have to football's weird. I've talked about it a lot, and quarterbacks more than any other because it's such a high-profile position. You've seen it in the past with players like Brett Favre and Ben Roethlisberger most recently, who received criticism for saying, it's not my job to get the next guy ready. My job is to compete and help this football team win. And that's sort of how every player has to handle it. There's clear signs. You have to compartmentalize. Sort of like being at the car dealership. You got to compartmentalize to get the heck out of there. You got to focus on what you can do. The other stuff you can't control. Coaches say that all the time. You can't control what you can control. And from a player standpoint, if the numbers are against you, if they just drafted your successor in the first round, all you can do is compete and do the best of your ability. And I think that's what veteran players tend to do, and they learn and they understand that.
Yeah, well, the one thing is, obviously, it's weird because I was talking about this morning with Eli, Roethlisberger, and Rivers. Rivers and Roethlisberger, they're still going strong. I mean, Roethlisberger just got a contract extension. Rivers is on the last year of his deal, but they probably are excited about bringing him back. In New York, I mean, they're just waiting for the sand to go through the hourglass here.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about that a lot. If you go back to that draft, to me, and I've been saying it for years, Eli Manning is clearly number 3 on that list.
But I said if they did a redraft, it would probably be. I want to get your opinion on it. I said this morning, if they did a redraft, Rivers would go 1, Roethlisberger would be 2, and Eli would be 3, even though Roethlisberger has multiple too, but has 2, and Rivers is the guy who has none, but he'd probably be the first of the 3.
Yeah, he's the best pure passer. So it depends. You can make an argument for Ben. I wouldn't kill people if they wanted to redraft and took him ahead of Phillip Rivers, but it would be really close. But nobody's taken Eli Manning ahead of Phillip Rivers, and that's hard for people to understand. And I get it, but if scouts look at the game a little bit differently because they understand how difficult it is to win a Super Bowl and how many people contribute to winning a Super Bowl, and they're just looking at players and traits and their individual play and success. And Phillip Rivers is a better quarterback. It's tough to argue otherwise.
Yeah, well, there's no question. But, at least Eli, though, I was going to say, because he doesn't seem like he'd be the kind of guy that's like, I'm not interested in, mentoring the next guy. Like we've heard from the Flaccos, the Roethlisbergers, and some other quarterbacks out there. I don't think Eli's that kind of guy like that. He would take Daniel Jones, but he also says in the same breath, he doesn't think it's a competition. This is my job, Daniel. Step off.
Yeah, I think it's not his job, number one. So I think those guys who have said it and verbalized it in the past, Joe Flacco, as you mentioned, Ben Roethlisberger, I mentioned Brett Favre, they're right. They're correct. And coaches understand that. It's the coaching staff's job to get that young player prepared. Now, it's helpful if the older veteran takes him under his wing, but you can't count on that. And maybe more than anything else is sort of leading by example, and veterans tend to do that anyway, because to have success at this level, you got to go about your business in the right way. And you have to be a professional, and you have to do your job not only on the field, but off the field. And the preparation part of it might be more important than the stuff that happens on game day that everyone sees. And that's sort of where veteran players can help younger players, just by setting that example and sort of teaching them how to be professionals, because that's a big part of it.
Talking a little NFL football at 4, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN. Robert Griffin III, I actually brought him up this morning as well. I can't remember the actual – because I was talking about Kyler Murray, and that, I was a little concerned about Murray being so small and taking hits, and that he could be an exciting player, much like Robert Griffin III was when he was a rookie in Washington. I mean, he was an excellent player, but he just physically couldn't keep up. And I'm wondering, we've heard a lot about Murray and what's going on out there. Is that the main concern for Murray as well for you, whether or not he can take the hits and withstand the punishment as such a small guy?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a small guy. It's my biggest concern with Carson Wentz right here in Philadelphia, just because of his style.
I actually had a Cowboys fan say to me that he likes Wentz, but he says he's starting to remind him of Tony Romo with all the injuries and whether he can, as he keeps getting banged up.
Well, Carson wishes he could be as healthy as Tony Romo, maybe later Tony Romo, but Tony played a long time before the injuries started to accrue pretty significantly. So he hasn't even gotten to that point. But anytime you have a mobile quarterback, and it doesn't have to be running the football, just somebody who likes to extend plays. Aaron Rodgers over the past few seasons, people are starting to say if he wants to play at the level that we're accustomed to till the ages of, say, Tom Brady and Drew Brees, he's going to have to change the way he plays and become more of a pocket quarterback who gets rid of the football rather than trying to extend plays. If you extend plays in this league and you try to do that consistently, whether it's just behind the line of scrimmage or running the football, ultimately, eventually, the clock is ticking. You're going to get hurt at some point.
Yeah. And that might be what happens. You know, Robert Griffin III came out, and today, who knew he was still in Baltimore across the Beltway there, but he came out and said the Ravens offense will, quote, shock some people. Now, Lamar Jackson's the quarterback there. RG3's the backup. But both of those guys, you know, are a hit away from getting hurt because of the way they play. But you see a situation where the Baltimore offense with Lamar Jackson, can he improve as a thrower and make that offense shock people?
Well, I think it's going to have to change. He hasn't. If you look at what they did, and remember, last year it was on the fly, so it's kind of what they had to do. When you're forced to play a young quarterback in season, you got to make do, and you got to take advantage of what he does well. And the Ravens were able to do that. I don't think it's sustainable, that type of offense in the modern NFL. I think you saw it in the playoffs. That playoff game was ugly. They just couldn't do anything offensively. So I'm going to be interested to see how they change the offense, how they morph the offense. I don't think they can be as run-heavy as they were last year. And then it all comes down to Lamar Jackson. Can he be accurate? We talked about that earlier this week. Generally, if you're not accurate in college, you're not going to be all of a sudden accurate at the pro level. So that's my biggest concern with Lamar and a Josh Allen in Buffalo. They were not accurate enough at the college level.
Yeah.
And that generally doesn't turn around at this level.
John, Tyreek Hill's name is coming up. We've seen some predictions at what his suspension might be. Heard max 4 games, but, you know, it's really hard to predict at this time where that will be. But I was talking about Mahomes this morning, doing a little AFC West quarterback, rankings there. And Mahomes, he's losing a lot. I mean, Hunt's going to be gone. Hill might be gone for a little bit. I'm not suggesting he's just going to stink, but he threw 50 touchdowns and 12 interceptions last year. He was the MVP of the league, but he's losing two pretty key weapons. So what do you see happening with Hill, and what about Mahomes without those guys?
Well, it's going to be more difficult. You can't keep losing players at that level and that type of explosion and what they bring to the offense. And not have to go about things in a different way. I think naturally he was so good last year. He was so spectacular from a number standpoint. There's going to be an adjustment period. That's what defensive coordinators have been doing this entire time, is looking at Patrick Mahomes' tape, teams that are going to play Kansas City, and devising ways to make things more difficult for them. That's how it works. And I talk about it with young quarterbacks. And everybody in fantasy football people and people who just look at numbers are going to say, wow, this guy's so great. And they're going to be disappointed because the numbers are going to come down a little bit. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad quarterback. That's just the natural progression of things. And you should expect that. But I think from Kansas City's standpoint, it's not about 50 touchdowns. It's not about explosion or upping those numbers. It's about winning games, and that's what Andy Reid's concerned about.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one though, to see where he takes it to that in year number 2. This is his 3rd year, but year number 2 as the starter, to see if he makes that another big jump. I mean, 50 and 12, he's always going to be kind of held to.
You're not making a big jump from that,
right? You're always going to be kind of held to that comparison.
Yeah, and for that reason, there's going to be pressure. And it's going to be unrealistic pressure.
Yeah.
Because you can look at the spike, say, of Peyton Manning and his MVP season when his last MVP season when Denver scored 600 points. Well, that's the high point of a really great quarterback. Things go up and things go down. He probably already hit his high point. You can't go much higher than 50.
If he already hit his high point in year number 2, I mean, that would be disappointing to see. Now, you just can't go off numbers. If you're just going off the numbers, then you're probably going to be disappointed.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah. From a numbers standpoint,
right.
He can be a better quarterback and not throw 50 touchdowns. I mean, there are issues with Patrick Mahomes' mechanics. People don't like, for whatever reason, people are weird, and they think there's no room for improvement. They think you're insulting someone when you point out These are human beings. They're not video games.
Yeah.
They're not joysticks. Everybody's got room for improvement. The knock on Patrick Mahomes coming out was that he had some mechanical issues. Those continue. He does have some mechanical issues. He makes throws. I've always compared him to Steph Curry in the NBA. He makes throws that if you're a coach, you say the classic no, yes. And same thing with Steph Curry when he pulls up from 30 feet and bangs a three. As a coach, your mentality is saying no, yes. And you're certainly not going to teach that to a younger player.
Right.
But these are so unique, these players. They're able to do things you're not supposed to do and still be successful. Doesn't mean you're not going to try to teach them, you know what? This might not work the next time. It's probably better if you square up, if your footwork's better, things like that.
How about Garoppolo? I know he hasn't been cleared yet. He says, we'll see where I am when the bullets start flying. But people forget he missed all last year with that ACL. They were a hot pick to be a playoff team last year based on the way he played. He got the big contract. But as we know in Philly and other places, that year after the ACL is it's a tough one.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a lot with Carson. It is going to take 2 full years. Doesn't mean he can't be successful. I always point to Adrian Peterson. His MVP season came after the ACL tear, which was in December of the prior season. So you can be successful, but from a physical standpoint, you're not going to feel right until that second year. And sometimes, hey, I just talk about pocket quarterbacks and guys moving around. If you embrace it, it can help you. Maybe force you to become a better pocket thrower because the league is obviously trending towards guys who are athletic and can extend plays. And that's important. But if you want to become the well-rounded quarterback who's going to play into his 40s, you better learn how to throw from the pocket as well.
Speaking of throwing the football, did you see bets are coming in for Mitchell Trubisky to win the league MVP? Now, we touched on him the other day.
I think they listened to me and got angry.
Yes, and all of a sudden money's coming in for Trubisky to be the MVP of the league.
Well, if you want to throw away your money,
he was 200 to 1, and now he's 50 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff and I talked about this yesterday while you were gone as well, and he interestingly agreed with me.
Well, this is all based on, by the way, John, Taylor Gabriel, one of his wideouts, says he sees a, quote, a drastic change in Trubisky's confidence. So now the money's pouring in.
Well, he should be more confident. I just think that comes with experience, but we know how this league is. Look at some of the quarterbacks in this league. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you want to throw your money away, the Bears might go 13-3 again because they have that great defense. I don't think they're going to because it's for a lot of the reasons I talked about. Difficult schedule, first place schedule now, difficult division, worst quarterback in the division. They might overcome all of that and be a great team again, but there's no way that Mitchell Trubisky is going to be up there with the great quarterbacks in this league. Anybody who thinks that hasn't watched an NFL game. I mean, think about it. Forget about the Bradys and the Rodgers and the Carson Wentzes here in Philadelphia. Think about the NFC South and Drew Brees and Matt Ryan and Cam Newton. There's 3 MVPs from one division.
Yeah. Well, you forget he was the FedEx Player of the Week. That'll get me laughing.
Anybody is free to throw their money away.
Yeah. Football at 4. We do it every day, 4 o'clock. Alkin NFL in July 21st. The Falcons will be at camp. July 24th, the Eagles will be at camp. August the 8th, the Eagles will kick off against the Tennessee Titans in their first exhibition game. John McMullen, every day, right here. Football at 4, 97.3 ESPN. Enjoy the weekend, John. Stay out of Steve Harvey's way, though. He's pissed at you.
Yeah, a lot of people are. I'm used to it.
Take care, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike.
John McMullen, like all guests, appeared to be the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.